Senator Palpatine was in his private office in the depths of Coruscant when he felt a tremor in the Force, something he hadn't experienced in decades. His yellowed eyes gleamed for an instant as he clenched his fists on the work table. It was a raw, primitive power, being born somewhere distant in the galaxy. He knew exactly what that meant. The prophecy of the Chosen One was not just a Jedi legend, and now he had the opportunity to shape that destiny. Without wasting time, he summoned his apprentice through the Force. Darth Maul appeared minutes later, kneeling before his master with the devotion of one who knew only Sith discipline. Palpatine walked around Maul slowly, his hands crossed behind his back as he planned each move. "My apprentice, something extraordinary has happened," he said in a controlled voice. "The Chosen One has been born, and we must find him before the Jedi even suspect his existence." Maul raised his gaze, his red eyes reflecting absolute determination. "What do you wish me to do, Master?" Palpatine smiled subtly. "Search for a boy with exceptional connection to the Force, someone who shines like a star amid the darkness. Dedicate every moment to this search." Maul nodded in agreement. "It will be done, Master," he responded before disappearing into the shadows. The years dragged on while Maul traversed obscure systems of the Outer Rim, following rumors and subtle disturbances in the Force. He visited dozens of arid planets, investigated slave markets and cantinas filled with smugglers. Each false lead only fueled his frustration, but also his determination. Then, after nearly a decade of tireless searching, he arrived on Tatooine following information about a merchant who had mentioned a strange child in Mos Espa. The desert planet didn't seem promising at first glance, but when Maul descended from the ship, he felt something. A pulse in the Force, weak but unmistakable, like a distant beacon calling to him. He narrowed his eyes under the scorching sun and decided to remain. For days, Maul wandered the dusty streets of Mos Espa, camouflaged under a cloak that hid his distinctive features. He observed, analyzed, felt every presence around him. It was on a particularly hot afternoon that he finally found him. A blond boy, dirty with grease, working in a junk shop while talking animatedly about pod engines with a Toydarian. The Force emanated from him intensely, almost suffocating for someone trained like Maul. He remained in the shadows, just watching, noting every detail. The boy was clever, quick with his hands, and there was something in him that suggested unlimited potential. Maul didn't approach, just sent a coded message to Palpatine. Hours later, a senatorial ship landed discreetly on the outskirts of Mos Espa, and Palpatine emerged dressed in simple but elegant attire. He dismissed his escort and walked alone through the streets, guided by the Force until he found the boy. From afar, he observed Anakin Skywalker working on a droid, his movements precise despite his young age. Palpatine felt immediate confirmation. It was him. The Chosen One was there, abandoned on a forgotten planet, wasting his potential as property of a junk dealer. He adjusted his expression to something cordial and paternal before heading to the modest dwelling where the boy lived. He knocked on the door and was received by a woman with a tired but kind look. "Good afternoon," said Palpatine with a carefully rehearsed smile. "My name is Senator Palpatine, from Naboo." Shmi Skywalker seemed confused, but invited him in. Moments later, Anakin came running, stopping abruptly upon seeing the elegant visitor. "Who are you?" asked the boy with genuine curiosity. Palpatine observed him attentively, measuring each reaction. "I am a senator of the Republic, young Anakin. I've heard of your exceptional talent with machines." Anakin smiled proudly. "I built a protocol droid by myself." Palpatine nodded impressed. "Remarkable. The Senate is recruiting young people with potential like yours. Would you like to come with me to Coruscant?" Anakin's eyes shone with excitement, but then he looked fixedly at Palpatine and asked, "Are you a Jedi?" The question caught Palpatine off guard for an instant. The boy had sensed the Force in him, even without any formal training. This confirmed everything. "Do you want to be a Jedi, Anakin?" he asked softly. "Yes," the boy responded without hesitation. Palpatine leaned slightly. "Then I can teach you to be more powerful than any Jedi." Anakin turned to his mother. "Mother, can I go with him?" Shmi looked at Palpatine, feeling something indefinable that bothered her. But seeing her son's hopeful eyes, she said, "You are the one who must decide, Ani." Anakin looked again at Palpatine. "Can I take my mother?" Palpatine gently shook his head. "The path of a Jedi must be solitary, young Skywalker." Palpatine then negotiated with Watto to buy Anakin's freedom. The Toydarian resisted initially, but money spoke louder. Anakin embraced his mother at length, promising to return one day, while tears ran down Shmi's face. "Be strong, Ani," she whispered, "and remember who you are." When they reached the ship, Anakin ran fascinated to the cabin, touching the controls with reverence. Maul waited in the shadows of the cargo compartment. Palpatine approached him and whispered coldly, "Kill the mother." Maul nodded silently. Minutes later, as the ship began to take off, Shmi was alone in her house when she felt a presence. Before she could scream, the red blade pierced through the shadows. On the ship, Anakin shuddered violently and began to cry, feeling something terrible tear through the Force. "What was that?" he asked, frightened. Palpatine placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have strong emotions, Anakin. That is a gift, not a weakness. Use them to your advantage." The boy didn't fully understand, but nodded slowly as the ship jumped to hyperspace toward Coruscant, leaving Tatooine and everything he knew behind. The following months brought significant changes to the Republic. Palpatine, through calculated political maneuvers and strategic alliances, ascended to the position of Supreme Chancellor. His office in the Senate became the center of galactic power, and few suspected the shadows he cultivated. Meanwhile, Anakin remained hidden in a private apartment in the depths of Coruscant, being prepared for a destiny he barely understood. One day, Mace Windu requested an audience with the new Chancellor, accompanied by Grand Master Yoda. The two Jedi entered the ornate room, their expressions grave. "Chancellor, a disturbance in the Force we sense," said Yoda, leaning on his staff. Windu complimented with a firm voice, "Something powerful has awakened in Coruscant. The presence is intense, but we cannot locate it." Palpatine feigned concern perfectly. "Does this represent any danger to the Republic, Jedi Masters?" Yoda closed his eyes briefly. "Uncertain the future is, but vigilant we will remain." Palpatine knew he couldn't risk Anakin's discovery by the Jedi. That same night, he made the necessary preparations. A private ship transported young Skywalker far from Coruscant, crossing obscure systems until they reached Mustafar. The volcanic planet was a hell of lava and ash, isolated and forgotten by most of the galaxy. There, in an ancient fortress built over rivers of magma, Anakin would begin his true training. When the ship landed on the landing platform, the heat was suffocating even through the refrigeration systems. "This will be your new home, young Skywalker," said Palpatine, guiding him through the dark corridors. Anakin looked around, feeling the raw power that emanated from the planet itself. "Why here?" he asked. "Because here you will learn to master your true potential." Darth Maul took over Anakin's training with relentless brutality. Each day began before dawn with strenuous physical exercises on the external platforms, where the heat tested the limits of human endurance. Maul showed no mercy or patience. "Pain is your ally," he would say while Anakin staggered exhausted. "Anger is your fuel. Embrace them." The lightsaber training was even more intense. Maul attacked without warning, forcing Anakin to react by instinct. "You are slow. Pathetic," shouted the Zabrak, his red blade humming dangerously close. Anakin quickly learned that hesitation meant pain. Over time, his reflexes sharpened, his connection with the Force deepened, fueled by frustration and the desire to prove his worth. But then, everything changed. Maul was summoned for a mission on Naboo and never returned. The news arrived through Palpatine. His apprentice had been defeated by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin felt something strange upon hearing about Maul's death. Palpatine noticed this immediately when he visited Mustafar weeks later. "Your previous master failed," he said calmly. You will not make the same mistake. From that moment on, Palpatine occasionally took over the training personally, teaching Anakin about manipulation, control, and the more subtle aspects of the dark side. The Force is not just raw power, my young apprentice. It is influence, it is absolute domination over the will of others. Anakin absorbed each lesson with growing intensity. But it was when Count Dooku appeared that the training reached new heights. The former Jedi Master, now a Sith, brought decades of knowledge and refinement. You have extraordinary potential, said Dooku the first time he observed Anakin fight. But wasted potential is useless. I will mold you into something truly formidable. Under Dooku's tutelage, Anakin flourished in ways that not even Palpatine had completely foreseen. The Count taught him Form 2, the elegant and lethal dueling style that he himself mastered. He taught him politics, strategy, how to read people and situations. The Jedi preach detachment, but it is through passion that we achieve true power, Dooku would explain during their sessions. Anakin grew in stature and skill, becoming a fearsome warrior. His mastery of the Force was frightening, capable of crushing battle droids with a gesture and manipulating weak minds effortlessly. Dooku watched with satisfaction mixed with caution. He will surpass us both eventually, he commented with Palpatine in a holographic communication. The Chancellor smiled. Exactly as planned, my old friend. The years transformed the boy from Tatooine into a powerful Sith, his emotions channeled into pure strength, his anger refined into a deadly weapon. It was during a dark meditation that Anakin, now a young adult, decided to investigate his past. He had never forgotten Tatooine, nor his mother. Using resources that Palpatine discreetly made available, he discovered the truth. Shmi Skywalker had died years ago, murdered on the same night he left. The revelation hit Anakin like lightning. He felt rage explode within him, consuming any remnant of light. Without asking permission, he took his personal ship and jumped to Tatooine. When he arrived in Mos Espa, he went straight to Watto's shop. The Toydarian was negotiating with clients when Anakin entered, his dark cloak partially hiding his face. "Do you remember me?" he asked in an icy voice. Watto looked confused. Then his eyes widened in recognition. "Ani? Little Ani?" Anakin didn't respond with words. He extended his hand, and everyone in the shop was thrown against the walls by the Force. Screams echoed as he channeled all his pain, all his accumulated fury. No one left alive. When Palpatine learned of the massacre, his smile was genuine. "You are complete now, my apprentice," he said when Anakin returned to Mustafar, still stained with blood. "Rise, Darth Vader." The arena of Geonosis seethed with the roar of thousands of battle droids and the hum of lightsabers when the Jedi finally realized they were not alone. Beside Count Dooku, on an elevated platform, stood a hooded figure that radiated dark power almost suffocatingly. Mace Windu was the first to sense it, his gaze fixing on the young man who remained motionless beside the separatist. When the figure removed his hood, revealing a young face marked by golden and intense eyes, a collective shiver ran through the present Jedi. Anakin Skywalker observed the battle with a cold expression, his hands resting calmly on the lightsaber attached to his belt. Dooku smiled upon noticing the confusion on the Jedi's faces. When the Republic ships began to descend bringing clone reinforcements, Dooku knew it was time to retreat. In the cave, Anakin's eyes fixed on Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi who had killed Maul, his first master. "Master, allow me to deal with this one," he said, pointing to the Jedi Master. Dooku hesitated briefly, then nodded. "Be quick." Anakin jumped from the platform with predatory grace, landing before Obi-Wan, who immediately assumed a combat position. "You don't need to do this, young one," tried Obi-Wan, his voice calm despite the tension. "There is still time to choose another path." Anakin activated his red saber with a threatening snap hiss. "You killed my master. There is no other path." The duel that followed was brutal and one-sided. Obi-Wan was a skilled duelist, master of Form 3, but Anakin was something completely different. Each strike carried devastating force. Each movement was precise and relentless. Within minutes, Obi-Wan was retreating desperately, his defense beginning to fail. A particularly violent movement broke his guard, and Anakin's saber cut deeply into his shoulder, making him fall to his knees. Anakin raised his blade for the final blow, rage burning in his eyes. Obi-Wan closed his eyes, preparing for the inevitable. But then a small green force intercepted the blow with surprising speed. Yoda had arrived, his green saber glowing as he pushed Anakin back. "Stop, you must," said the Grand Master, positioning himself between the Sith and the wounded Jedi. Anakin tilted his head, studying the ancient creature before him. "Master Yoda, finally we meet." Yoda examined the young man with deep sadness. "Lost you are, young one, consumed by the darkness." Anakin laughed bitterly. What followed was a confrontation that none of the present Jedi would ever forget. Yoda and Anakin moved at a speed that made it impossible to follow with ordinary eyes, their sabers creating a web of red and green light. The ground cracked under the force of their attacks. Debris flew in all directions. They seemed equal in power, each anticipating the other's movements through the Force. Dooku watched with a smile of genuine pride. Seeing his apprentice face the legendary Yoda as an equal confirmed everything he had believed about Anakin's potential. But when sensors began to detect more Republic ships approaching, he activated his communicator. "Anakin, we need to leave. More reinforcements are arriving." Anakin, even immersed in the duel, heard the order. Reluctantly, he used a massive force explosion to push Yoda back, gaining precious seconds. "This is not over, Master Yoda," he said before jumping to Dooku's ship that was already beginning to take off. Yoda recovered quickly, but it was too late. The Separatist ship disappeared into Geonosis' sky. The Grand Master remained there for a long moment, his tiny face marked by deep concern. When he returned to the other Jedi, his expression was somber. "An emergency council. Convene we must." In the council chamber in Coruscant, days later, Yoda reported the encounter. "Young he is, 20 years, perhaps less, but powerful beyond any Padawan I have trained." Mace Windu crossed his arms, his expression tense. "How did someone so young achieve such power?" Ki-Adi-Mundi shook his head slowly. "This defies everything we know about Sith training." Yoda closed his eyes. "The chosen one he may be, but corrupted by the dark side. Great threat he represents." Plo Koon leaned forward. "Then should we prioritize his capture or elimination?" Yoda opened his eyes, and there was steel determination in them. "Stop him we must, or destroyed the Jedi Order will be." The decision was unanimous. Anakin Skywalker became the priority target of the Jedi Council, above even Dooku himself. But finding him would prove almost impossible. During the Clone Wars that followed, Anakin remained in the shadows, appearing only at strategic moments alongside Dooku. His reputation grew with each appearance. There were stories of entire battalions of clones being destroyed by a single warrior in a black cloak. Jedi Masters were found fallen, cut down by a red blade. The name Darth Vader began to be whispered with terror through the corridors of the Republic. But no one could track him. He was a ghost, appearing and disappearing as Palpatine and Dooku's plans required. Meanwhile, Palpatine himself consolidated his power as Chancellor, using the war to expand his authority. It was during one of these political maneuvers that fate took an unexpected turn. Anakin was in Palpatine's private office in Coruscant, discussing future strategies, when the door opened without warning. Senator Padmé Amidala entered hurriedly, carrying datapads about emergency legislation. She stopped abruptly upon seeing the dark figure beside the Chancellor. Her eyes met Anakin's, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. Palpatine noticed the immediate tension and smiled internally. "Ah, Padmé, what a pleasant surprise," he said with rehearsed cordiality. "Allow me to make introductions. This is Anakin Skywalker, my personal assistant in special matters. Anakin, this is Senator Padmé Amidala, my countrywoman and Naboo's representative in the Senate." Anakin, normally so controlled and somber, felt something completely different when looking at her. Her presence in the Force was like warm light amid the darkness he had inhabited for so long. He sketched a disconcerted smile, small and hesitant, so different from his usual mask of coldness. "Senator," he said with a slight bow of his head. Padmé was also visibly disconcerted, her eyes examining the young man who radiated something dangerous but also strangely magnetic. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Skywalker," she responded, her voice professional but with an almost imperceptible tremor. The conversation about legislation was brief and tense, each of the three conscious of the strange energy that filled the room. When Padmé finally left, Anakin remained looking at the closed door for a long moment. In the following days, Anakin couldn't get Padmé out of his thoughts. It was a dangerous distraction, something he knew he should suppress. But the more he tried to forget her, the more she occupied his mind. Finally, he decided to act. Using Sith concealment techniques in the Force that Dooku had taught him, he could move through Coruscant without being detected by the Jedi. He began to observe Padmé's patterns, learning her routes, her habits. Then, on a seemingly casual afternoon, he orchestrated an encounter. Padmé was leaving a Senate meeting when she literally bumped into him in the corridor. "Oh, excuse me," she said, then recognized him. "Mr. Skywalker?" Anakin feigned surprise. "Senator Amidala. What a coincidence." They walked together briefly, the conversation beginning formally but gradually becoming more personal. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, an attraction that defied logic. Anakin, for the first time in years, allowed himself to be vulnerable, to show fragments of humanity under the dark armor. Padmé, in turn, saw something in him that intrigued and frightened simultaneously. The encounters became more frequent, always carefully orchestrated to seem accidental. They began to talk about politics, philosophy, dreams. Anakin never revealed his true nature, maintaining the facade of political assistant. Padmé, isolated by the responsibilities and constant dangers of her position, found in him something she hadn't experienced before. Weeks became months, and what began as curiosity transformed into something deeper. They began to meet in secret, in discreet restaurants or in the private Senate gardens at nightfall. Padmé knew it was risky, that there were secrets Anakin kept, but she couldn't resist. For Anakin, she represented something he thought he had lost forever, a genuine connection not based on fear or power. It was there, in those stolen moments of tenderness amid war and darkness, that everything began to change. The Sith who had been molded only for destruction began to feel something that Palpatine had never foreseen: true love. And this would plant seeds of consequences that no one could imagine. The following months brought a gradual transformation in Anakin that he could barely comprehend. Each encounter with Padmé awakened something inside him that had been buried under layers of anger and dark training. It was during one of those nights, while they watched the lights of Coruscant from her private apartment, that Anakin finally made a decision. "Padmé, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice laden with tension. She turned to face him, perceiving the seriousness in his eyes. "You can tell me anything, Anakin." He gathered courage. "I am a Sith Lord, apprentice to Count Dooku, and Palpatine, the Chancellor you trust, is Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who orchestrates this entire war." The silence that followed was deafening. Padmé instinctively backed away, her eyes wide with shock and horror. Padmé felt her legs weaken and needed to lean on the wall. Everything began to make sense in a terrifying way. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Anakin took a step toward her. "Because I don't want any more lies between us. Because when I'm with you, I feel something I thought I had lost forever." Tears began to run down Padmé's face. "You killed people, Anakin. Jedi. Innocent soldiers." He lowered his head, unable to deny it. "Yes, and I will carry that weight for the rest of my life." Padmé covered her face with her hands. "I need you to leave. Now." Anakin nodded slowly and headed to the door, but stopped at the threshold. "I understand if you hate me, but know that my feelings for you are the only real thing I have." Days passed without contact between them. Padmé struggled internally, divided between her duty and the feelings she had developed for Anakin. Then, one morning, she woke up feeling strange. After a discreet visit to a medical droid, the truth was revealed. She was pregnant. For weeks, she avoided Anakin, but he eventually found her. "Padmé, please, just listen to me," he implored. She finally opened the door. "I'm pregnant," she said bluntly. Anakin froze, then a genuine smile began to form. "We're going to have a child?" he whispered in wonder. Padmé nodded, but her expression remained serious. "Anakin, I cannot raise a child in this life of lies and darkness. You need to choose, me and our child, or Palpatine and the dark side." Anakin looked at her, at the woman carrying his child, and felt something break inside him. "You," he said finally, "I choose you." But Padmé was not easily convinced. "Words are not enough. As long as Palpatine is in power, we will never be safe. I will expose him to the Senate." Anakin felt panic. "Padmé, no. He is too powerful. He will kill you." She held his face between her hands. "Then help me. Help me do the right thing. For our child." Anakin closed his eyes, the conflict tearing his soul. Finally, he nodded. "All right, we'll do this together." They spent days gathering evidence, compiling records of suspicious communications, manipulated voting patterns, everything they could use against the Chancellor. When Padmé finally stood up in the Senate, her voice echoed through the crowded chamber. "Senators of the Republic, I bring grave accusations against Chancellor Palpatine." She presented evidence after evidence, connections with the Separatists, manipulation of crises, illegal extension of powers. The chamber exploded in debates. Bail Organa stood up in support. These accusations must be thoroughly investigated. The vote was tight, but the Senate decided Palpatine would be removed and face trial. Senatorial guards advanced to escort him. For a moment, Palpatine maintained the mask of offended politician. Then his eyes met Padmé's, and she saw pure hatred in them. "You have made a grave mistake, my dear," he said softly as he was taken away. That night, Anakin insisted that he stay at Padmé's apartment, where he could protect her. Both sensed a dark presence approaching. Anakin activated his saber instantly. "Stay behind me." The door exploded into fragments when Palpatine entered, his eyes burning yellow, force lightning crackling from his fingers. "My foolish apprentice," he hissed. "You betrayed everything because of this woman?" Anakin positioned himself between Palpatine and Padmé. "You betrayed me first, lied about everything." Palpatine laughed bitterly. "I gave you power. I saved you from that pathetic existence on Tatooine." Anakin felt anger surge. "You killed my mother." The admission made Palpatine pause. "It was necessary to complete your transformation." Anakin roared and attacked. The duel was devastating. The apartment was destroyed. Furniture turned to ash. Windows exploded. Palpatine was incredibly powerful, but Anakin fought for something beyond himself now. He fought for Padmé, for his unborn child. "You were always weak," shouted Palpatine, launching lightning. Anakin blocked them with his saber, advancing. "No, I am finally strong enough to see through your lies." With a final movement, Anakin found an opening. His saber pierced Palpatine's chest. The former Chancellor looked in disbelief. "You think this is over? The dark side is eternal." Anakin deactivated the saber, letting the body fall. "But your reign is not." He turned to Padmé, who ran into his arms. "We need to leave Coruscant," he said. "Naboo. We can go to my country house at the lake." Weeks later, they were in Naboo, far from the chaos of Coruscant. Padmé's property was isolated, surrounded by green hills and the tranquil lake. Anakin spent his days in contemplation, meditating at the water's edge. The dark side still whispered, but each day its voice grew weaker. When Luke and Leia Skywalker were born, something definitively changed in Anakin. Holding his twin children for the first time, he felt the light within him shine brighter. "I promise you will grow up free," he whispered. In the following years, Anakin worked to redeem himself, purging the Sith poison from his soul little by little. When Luke and Leia demonstrated sensitivity to the Force, Anakin knew he would need to train them. "The Force is not light or darkness," he explained. "It is balance. It is choice." Luke and Leia grew strong and compassionate, embodying the best that Anakin could teach. Eventually, other Force-sensitive youths found their way to them. Anakin accepted some as apprentices, creating a small academy in Naboo. They were not Jedi bound by rigid codes, nor were they Sith consumed by anger. They were simply guardians, dedicated to protecting the innocent. Luke eventually fell in love with Mara, a young pilot, while Leia found her way in galactic diplomacy. When the first grandchildren were born, Ben Skywalker and Jaina, Anakin held the children and felt the cycle complete itself. From slave on Tatooine to Sith Lord and finally to grandfather at peace, his journey had been tortuous. The Skywalkers established a new tradition in the galaxy, working alongside the Jedi but maintaining independence, creating a lineage of knights who served good without rigid dogmas.